Jai Dolwani.
Thank you so much. So before we talk about LTV, which as Steve said, I'm very passionate about, I think it's really important to frame the conversation. And a part of that is how I joined Winc. So I first joined Winc as our Director of Retention about 2 years ago to focus on this problem exactly. But the plot twist was that I had never worked with the direct-to-consumer brand and never worked in the marketing space in my entire life. I was an ex-consultant, and all I knew how to do was throw out fancy buzzwords and pretend that I know what I'm talking about, which is probably how I got the job, but was able to go in and able to make it work. But really the frame of this conversation is an outsider's perspective coming in, not really a traditional marketer, breaking down the problem of LTV into something that's actionable, something that's measurable, and developing a process with ups and downs along the way. So I'll share what worked. I'll definitely share what didn't work. But if everybody can come out of this with even a morsel of an idea that you can bring back to your team or your company, I think that would spell some success. But what really introduced me to Winc in the first place and what I really liked about it was the fact that it was creating a portfolio of brands for the next generation of consumers. Typically, the wine space is incredibly pedantic, right? So it's very snobby, and for the next generation, there's a large barrier to entry. What I really liked about what Winc was doing is that they didn't really care about the products or the brands and how that pertained to that space. They just cared about having the right product for the right moment in that person's life to be enjoyed with the right company. And I thought that was really exciting. And the way in which Winc distributes its products and brands is through an omni-channel way. We have a large direct-to-consumer business, but we also sell, like Steve said, in restaurants and in wholesale as well. Does somebody have a clicker, by the way? Is it this thing? Perfect. That did not look like a clicker to me. But before we get into LTV, I do want to talk about a little bit about the Winc.com subscription model, because it's really important to frame, how we came up with some of these initiatives. So we acquire customers in Winc.com through a really heavy first-time discount, 50% plus. They're into a membership model that's a little bit unlike a traditional wine subscription. Traditionally, you get a box of wines delivered to your door every month or every quarter. At Winc, you get credits, and you can use those credits to purchase on our website, whether it's from our recommendations that we set with our algorithm that learns your palate over time, or browsing our entire portfolio and just choosing what you want. So it's really in the hands of the consumer to order when they want, how they want, and how much they want. So getting into LTV, the first biggest misconception that I hear all the time is asking the question, what is your LTV? LTV is not a single number. It's an accumulation of gross profit over a period of time. And as any brand owner or CFO would tell you, cash today is so much more important than cash a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, which is why the timing component is really important. Paul mentioned earlier he doesn't care about long-term LTV. He wants that cash today, which is why the time frame is so incredibly important. And what your LTV should look like is really a curve. It should be that accumulation of margin over time, and something that really defines what your acceptable rate of return is relative to your cost of capital. That is really important to understand. Now, LTV itself isn't necessarily particularly actionable. It's really vague. It's pretty much revenue and margin and all of the things. So I started breaking it down as a consultant would. It's a combination of lifetime revenue, which for us meant our subscription retention, for the people that we retained, the order frequency, and the average order value of those orders. And it was also margin, which for a marketer, what you can really impact is price per bottle, bottles per order. COGS, other variable expenses, of course, come into play. But as a marketer, that wasn't something that I could impact. So it isn't something that I focused on. The other thing that I focused on, like I mentioned, was timing. The steeper the earlier part of that LTV curve, the better it is, the better your cash-on-cash conversion is, the more cash you have to invest in inventory and product and in customer acquisition. So I really framed all of these components with an early time frame in terms of when I was focusing on the customer journey. So with these three things, I had key focus areas and key impactful metrics that I could go develop initiatives against. The first was retention, second was frequency, and third was AOV. And if you look at what actually makes up AOV, it's those things that impact margin as well. So AOV was really a double whammy in that it helped increase our lifetime revenue, but it also helped increase the margin of each of our orders. So I took each of these three and developed a set of initiatives to test and eventually implement that together would make an aggregate impact on our overall LTV. So on the retention side, the data that we looked at was cancellation reasons. Every time a subscriber canceled, we collected that reason. But in aggregate, it didn't really tell us too much. What really unlocked value was cohorting cancellation reasons by when somebody canceled. So if somebody canceled before their second month, it was a completely different reason from those who had canceled before their 12th month or their 24th month. And what we found was that people who canceled early, as you could probably tell from the second slide, really wanted that aggressive deal. They wanted the discount, and they didn't want to pay full price for the product. They didn't feel like the cost for value proposition was quite there for them to pay the full price of the monthly membership. And for people who canceled later on in their journey, it was really about product selection and availability. We didn't give them a reason to come back each and every month. Our product assortment was somewhat limited, and there wasn't a reason for them to continue to order from us. So we took those two insights and then developed some initiatives against them. For those deal seekers, the first thing that we did is we toyed with the idea of a multi-month discount. What if instead of doing a large acquisition offer, we spread out those discount dollars over a period of 4 months? That seemed to make sense, right? Like they would be incentivized to stay with us for multiple months. They would get a discount on each of those months. Seemed like a win-win. But that's when really setting up the test and how you look at these initiatives and the KPIs that you look at are really important. It did increase retention, and it did increase LTV. But our conversion rate went down, our cost per click on ads went up, and ultimately our acquisition efficiency suffered. People really like seeing a low number in their first order, and that got them into the subscription. So ultimately, although this helped improve retention, it wasn't enough to offset the decrease in customer acquisition and the increase in customer acquisition costs. So we took an L on this one. Another one was, our creative director came to us with an idea around a new member postcard. And the concept here was, let's separate this from a transactional relationship and start to create an emotional connection. So we sent half of our new customers a postcard in the mail, not in their box, with a note from our winemaking team talking about how much they enjoyed making the wine and how much we hope they enjoy it. That small touch increased retention by 5%. Not a lot, but for a postcard, the ROI was definitely there. And so this postcard is something that we do variations of even today, and was one of those things that we didn't really think would make an impact, but actually did have an impact. Another thing that we spent a lot of time on was this first box analysis. We were like, okay, if we knew exactly what wines to put in your first box, maybe they'll like it more, and maybe they'll come back again. So we spent months with complex data models. This is a screenshot of one of them. You're not meant to read the numbers. They don't really matter. The point is, it was a lot of time, a lot of effort. But what we ultimately learned is that there are way too many variables for a small in-house analytics team like we did to potentially tackle in a single model in a time frame that makes sense for us to have an impact on the business. So we went about this process for a couple of weeks, and we were like, wait, first bottle matters, but then their palette also matters, and their acquisition channel matters, and their acquisition offer matters, and it just got way too complicated to actually make an impact. So this was something that we spent a lot of time on, we eventually killed, didn't actually end up driving the needle anywhere. And I think it's really important to understand that, if you're working with a large brand like a Stitch Fix or something like that, there's a lot of machine learning, algorithms, data, et cetera. But for some of us smaller brands, that's not necessarily reasonable, so you have to go back to the basics. This is something that we tried to do, but didn't end up working out for us. Pivoting to the discovery piece, right? The people who cancel later in their journey. We wanted to introduce new products to them more often. So what we did was, one, we improved the way that we communicated our new product launches. What we did was essentially every time we launched a red wine, we sent an email right before somebody's subscription was about to renew, to people who like red wines. We're like, hey, we just launched this. We gave them a reason to be excited for their next month. Same on the white wine side. So it was segmented, it was timely, it wasn't a batch and blast, it was right before their subscription was about to renew. And that was something that really got people excited about their next box and got them to extend their membership by another month. Obviously, for product selection and availability, the biggest thing that we could possibly do is increase the number of SKUs that we had on the site. But for anyone who knows wine, you know that it's a year-long process, and it is so expensive to invest in the grapes, the production, the cash outflow is so large from the start that we had to find a lower lift way to actually test the idea before bringing it to life. So what we did is something that we don't normally do. We took third-party wines, we put them on our site, and we ran somewhat of a match market test, but on the retention side. For a couple of months, we looked at, did LTV increase, did retention increase, and sure enough, customers were happier, they retained longer, and so we made the decision to invest millions of dollars in adding 70 new products to our portfolio through the course of the following year, but we wouldn't have been able to do that, nobody would have committed to it, without early data points showing that it was something that worked. So we were able to find a scrappy way to take a big idea, test it in a small quantity with low risk, and then use that data and use those results to invest into the long term for the business. So summing up on the retention side, had some winners with the postcard, the email, and the SKU test. Took an L with the multi-month discount, and of course the box one analysis was a bunch of running in circles and not actually getting where. The reality is not everything works. Certainly, everything didn't work for us. Order frequency was the second thing that we wanted to tackle. And this was something that I was particularly excited about. Only 40% of our customers actually ordered every month with us. And I'm like, that's a huge opportunity. There's 60% of people that aren't ordering every month. Let's get them to order. At the time, and I guess I still am, addicted to coffee. And I made my own coffee during the week, and I went to Starbucks over the weekend. And they had this thing in their app, this is actually a screenshot from my phone from a couple years ago, that tried to get me to order from Starbucks during the weekdays as well, to create a habit of me going there during my work schedule. And it was really smart, and they rewarded me with 150 bonus stars. It's like a free drink. It was a very big deal. And I did it. And I still, to this day, have the habit of now ordering Starbucks every single day. And it's something that was like, okay, let me take that and translate that to the Winc business. That has to work, right? Like Starbucks is doing it, we can do it. And so that was our execution of that. We said, if you ordered 3 months in a row, we'll give you a free bottle of wine. Pretty much the same initiative. The difference was that I was already consuming coffee every single day. They got me to change where I consumed it and where I purchased it from. People may not need more than a few bottles of wine every couple of months, and what we were trying to do was get them to change what they consumed instead of going out, going to a restaurant, having more wine at home. And it wasn't something that we were able to find success in. So results of this test were pretty middling, didn't get very much out of it. I think it's something that could still be a great idea for a product or a subscription like coffee, but wasn't something that applied to our business. So again, another inconclusive result. And then on AOV, and this is something that I'm really excited about because like I said, not only does it impact revenue, it also impacts margin. What we looked at was the components, average bottles per order, as well as average price per bottle. And not only did we look at the average, we looked at the distribution to see what percentage of customers were in what price buckets or were ordering what volume. And the biggest key insight that we extracted from looking at those distributions was that there were a lot of customers ordering 7 to 11 bottles at a time. And most of our customers didn't know that we had a case discount. And so if somebody purchased 12 bottles of wine, they'd get a 10% discount. So we used a combination of those two insights to develop some initiatives to spread knowledge around the case discount and get people who were purchasing 7 to 11 bottles to purchase 12 bottles. And so we sent an email, a targeted email, to all of our customers who had a ton of credits built up. They were the most likely to buy in bulk. We did web banners on our site. You can't really see it, but it's a yellow violator at the top, so anytime somebody logged in, We talked about the case discount. And we had some gamification. In our cart, we had a thermometer that said X number of bottles to free shipping and X number of bottles to a case discount. So we really, really tried to spread the awareness of that program that we already offered. We also started advertising in bundles. My hypothesis was that if we sell in bundles and packs, people will buy in bundles and packs. And sure enough, that was true. So to this day, we do seasonally relevant bundles that we promote during specific times of the year. As you can see over here, something that's really ingrained as a part of our strategy today. It reduces the friction of people, picking out 12 bottles from the site. It's something that's relevant for the moments that they're enjoying with their friends at a given point in time. So some of those things worked. We were definitely able to make a really large impact from some of those initiatives, the web banner, the cart thermometer, the bundles. It was all great. An L that we took was on those case discount emails. If you remember the baby got bulk email from a couple slides ago, it did improve average order value. But what it also did was remind people that they had a bunch of accumulated credits that they weren't using. Maybe they probably shouldn't have a wine membership in the first place. So we got a lot of cancellations as a result of it. So that's something that I know we don't typically like to talk about a lot, but it's really important that when you're targeting people, you're looking at the right metrics. Over here, it's not only AOV, but it's also what happened to their long-term retention and what's the psychological components that drove their decisions and their actions. So to summarize, lots of winners, some losers, some things that were inconclusive. What's really important is that you take small ideas, test them in a low-impact way, have a really, really strong test plan, and understand that small initiatives like this, when put together, can make a really, really large impact on your business. Thank you so much, everyone. I think we have some time for questions.
Jay, that was tremendous. Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing the things that didn't work. I really think that in settings like this, the things that don't work are really the best teachable moments for everyone. Thanks so much for that. You must have questions for this. This was really cool detail. I have loads of questions. Okay. This must require a tremendous amount of personalization in your outreach. So I'm curious about, on the back end, we're talking through email, various styles of messaging for these individual segments. Did you have to make any changes to the infrastructure so that you could actually send out these much more highly segmented and personalized appeals?
Yeah, great question. Not to the infrastructure, but the way in which we went about collecting the data. So we had an offshore analytics team that we used to use for segmentation, but what we quickly realized with running so many of these initiatives that running to an analytics resource for every single thing probably wasn't the most sustainable way to get results and to get results quickly. So we actually onboarded a third-party CDP as a result of that, where we were able to import all of our data, use segmentation, use personalization, and do that in a way that was much more efficient, much more automated, and something that was in the marketer's hands. So we changed the way in which, the tools in which we use to look at our data.
How about diminishing returns? At what point are you overanalyzing and over-segmenting and parsing out too many various groups so it's really not, it's no longer worth the upside?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the point where we're at right now, where the more initiatives that you run, the incremental return gets lower and lower, right? So when I came in, Winc hadn't really been thinking about LTV in this mindset yet, so we were able to make a large impact really quickly. But ultimately, LTV is an art and it's also a science, and what I spoke to was the science. But at the end of the day, you also have to have the art, and that's having great products that resonate with customers. And so focusing on that, in addition to the science, the breaking down of the components, is something that's really important. And now we spend most of our time focusing on the art.
So let me end by going back to your first slide and the question of when somebody asks what your LTV is, they often give you a number. What's your answer? What's your LTV?
I ask them what time frame they're interested in. What I typically use is we like to get a 3x return on our customers over a period of 5 years, and we want payback in the first few months. So those are our goals based on our cost of capital and our balance sheet. That's going to change for everybody depending on your financial position. So I think it's really about when you're trying to get that cash and how much tolerance you have for getting that cash in the future and what your cost of capital is there.
Jai Dolwani, excellent. Thank you so much.